Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you're doing well. Hang on a second. I meant to pull something up over here so that I can see the live chat at the same time. All right. Pop that out. I need to have all of the screens out, all of the tabs out all the time so that I can see everything. I hope you guys are doing well. For those that are members and were there for the members only live stream, once again, I apologize. We had some really bad hotel Wi-Fi, I should say, where we were at. And so I couldn't actually, it was so bad. It was not enough to support even like really much of even like posting was difficult. It showed. So anyway, I should have realized that before I even got started, but I at least tried. We tried, right? So anyway, but we're back in the studio, as you can see, and ready to go with another episode of Classic Trials, going through the Menendez trial as we have been for the last, not quite, well, we've had 14 weeks of it, but of course it's been broken up because of the move and there was the Murdaugh trial and all this kind of stuff. So now we are back. We're back. And I'm so excited to be, like I said last week, in the new studio. Things are going well. Things are going great. And we're picking up where we left off. So we've got more Dr. Oziel today. Last week, I was not feeling it, right? Leslie Abramson, one of the defense attorneys, I think Erik, somebody said she's Erik Menendez's attorney. I think I might be incorrect about that though. I hope not. Anyway, but regardless, whatever. One of the defense attorneys has been very successfully disassembling a lot of the prosecution's witnesses so far in this case. And Dr. Oziel is one of them. I mean, he doesn't get more damaging than a witness for the defense. It's in terms of evidence, right? It doesn't get more damaging than having someone come in and say, yeah, they admitted to me that they did all of these things and they felt really bad about it. And, they needed to relieve all of this sort of guilt from them. Do I have a cat back there? Oh, I do. Okay. Sorry about the wobbling. That was Holmes, not earthquake. He might pop up at some point. So anyhow, let's see here. Let's say hi to some folks in the chat and then we'll get going. Be good to see you, Gwendolyn SS. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you as well. We're just gonna kind of pop over. Anna B says, hi, everybody. Good morning, or good afternoon. I'm not sure where you are. Oh, members only. This is not supposed to be members only. What am I doing? This is supposed to be public. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hazo1. I should have realized that it's not members only. Oh my gosh. I just now realized. Okay. Wow. We're off to a good start. Okay. Thank you so much, Hazo1, for pointing that out. It is not supposed to be members only. That was a mistake in setting everything up. So happy to have all of you guys here. Welcome for everyone. So, all right. Yes. Yeah, I see some folks here. Melissa Simok, we're in. Tony P's in here too. We've got Kit Kat is saying hi. Yeah, I apologize, guys. That was not supposed to be members only. So that was 100% a mistake. And I'm happy to have everybody here now. So, okay. Shall we get going? I think we should. I think we probably should. So, Brittany Chanel, good morning from my spring break in Illinois. Well, happy spring break. That's always fun, right? Getting out, hopefully getting some sunshine. I got a little bit too much sunshine myself this weekend. I was out and about with Mr. Bites and completely forgot, even though I really should. I mean, with my kind of skin, I should know better. But we had a whole day outside, and at the end of the day, Mr. Bites turned to me and was like, "Ooh, you're a little reddish." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not used to being outside. I'm used to being indoors, and like it's been, cold weather and all this kind of stuff." So, yeah. So anyhow, I'm a little bit sunburned myself, but hopefully that doesn't happen to you, Brittany. Remember your sunscreen when you're off on spring break and maybe getting outside and all that kind of fun stuff, because that can be a little bit of a doozy. Alrighty. Okay. So awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful to have all of you people in here, and very, very happy about that. Okay. Let's get moving with more of this Menendez trial. This session here is supposed to be this is like 3 hours worth in this segment. And then there's one more with Dr. Oziel, but the last like 20 minutes, 30 minutes or something, I think is like all oral argument. We'll skip through that. So we might start the next portion with Dr. Oziel as well. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. But that might be where we're at. I don't know. All right. Get your bingo cards ready for the big hair, the paisley ties, the wackadoodle patterns. and let's see what's next, shall we? All right, let's do it.
In the trial, the defendants are in court with their attorneys. The prosecution is represented, and we have both juries in the courtroom. A belated good morning to all of you. And sorry again for the delay, but I think you'll hear me saying that a few more times during the trial. There were some matters that the lawyers and I had to discuss longer, but we completed those discussions and we're ready to resume with the trial and the cross-examination of the witness. Dr. Oziel, would you get back on the witness stand, please?
Yeah, Menendez Monday.
And would you state your name again for the record?
Dr. L. Jerome Oziel.
And I'll remind you, you're still under oath. Those papers over there, if you can give those to me, please.
I'll remind you, I was not thrilled.
You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I want to mark as Exhibit 110 a document that's previously been described as the witness's CV, but I want to show it to you to be sure. I'm going to show you again this document and ask if that does appear to be your curriculum vitae from 1988. At least that's the date on the top.
That's the date on the top, and I believe that I've testified that it looks like a completely out-of-date curriculum vitae.
Well, of course, it also has a later date entries than 1988. It has 1990 television appearances, does it not?
I believe that it does only with respect to television appearances, and I to best of my knowledge, somebody simply typed that in because nothing else is dated beyond something that I can see. That looks like it's beyond the 70s. It looks like an out-of-date vita that at some point was accurate and is now out of date.
But that's, you haven't found a more recent date one yet, have you?
No, as a matter of fact, I can't currently locate the file where my vitas. I haven't found the vitas at all.
My real question is, though, isn't that the same document I showed you before?
Yes, it is.
Now, Dr. Oziel, you've testified about this session of October 31st, 1989. That session began with just yourself and my client, Erik, present. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, Erik didn't just walk in off the street for this session. He had an appointment with you. Is that right?
To the best of my recollection, that's correct.
Usually you don't have walk-ins, you have appointments.
That's correct.
And do you remember how long before October 31st the appointment was made?
No, I don't. I think it was sometime within a couple of days of that particular appointment, but I don't recall specifically.
Do you recall now what day of the week that particular appointment was?
No, I don't. What day it was? No, I don't.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at your 1989 book?
Yes, it probably would.
Let me show you the page that shows October 31st, 1989. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, it does.
It was a Tuesday, was it not?
Yes, it appears to be Tuesday.
Now, your regular practice in 1989, based on other weeks as well, was that you would see patients ordinarily on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday as full days. Is that right?
I'm sorry, can you give me the book so I can refresh my memory? And what was it you asked, counsel? Could you repeat the question?
Why don't you look at the book first, then I can ask you a question.
Okay. I'm looking at it.
Does it refresh your memory looking at the book?
If you can ask the question again, I will address the question.
Did you ordinarily in 1989 see patients on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday?
Yes, but I also see myself seeing people on Thursday.
You have a full day of patients on Thursdays.
Not usually, but I do see patients on Thursdays.
Do you have a full day of patients on Thursdays?
Specify the time, please.
In the book in front of you, do you see a single Thursday that has a full day of patients?
I'd have to look at all 50 weeks. Did you want me to do that?
All right, whatever it takes for you to be able to answer a question.
Okay.
Overall, the question relates to the entire year or to
Whatever
a
it
particular
takes to
portion of the
answer a
year?
question.
The entire year, I think it's the same.
It appears as I'm looking through the book that I see partial days Thursday, but not that I haven't seen a full day. There are days when I see half days, but I don't see a full day, with the exception of one day here that relates to the current case where I have a full day.
Now, let's go back to the week of October 31st. You did not have a day of patients that Monday, the day before, the 30th. Is that right?
No, I did not.
You're usually off on Mondays, correct?
Well, when you say off, can you clarify what you mean
Do you
by off?
usually go into your office on Bedford Drive and see patients on Mondays?
Not.
In
You're asking,
19?
did he on that?
Indeed, Your Honor, I am.
Okay. It does not appear I did.
You don't remember?
No, I'm just saying that there are no patients scheduled. I may have been in the office, but I don't have any appointments scheduled. Sometimes I went to the office to do work.
Do you know where you were on October 30th, 1989?
No,
Do you know where you were on Sunday, October 29th, 1989?
no.
Do you know that you were in Arizona with Judalon Smith those 2 days?
Overall.
Yeah, I don't recall at all where I was those days.
You did go to Arizona with Judalon Smith on at least one occasion, did you not?
On some occasion I did, yes.
Do you know where you were when, I'll strike that. Did you become aware of Erik needing to see you? Put it that way. Before Erik actually made the appointment.
I'm not sure what you mean by that question.
Were you contacted by one of Erik's relatives?
Yes, I was.
And after that contact by one of, and was that a telephone contact?
To the best of my recollection, it was.
And after that telephone contact, did Erik himself call to make an appointment?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember physically where you were when Erik called to make the appointment?
No, I don't.
Would it refresh your recollection if I told you you were at Judalon Smith's house?
No, because that's not what I recall.
Well, you just told us you don't recall where you were.
No, but I don't recall. I have no memory of being at Judalon Smith's house and receiving any call.
But you have no memory of where you were when this call came. Is that true?
No, I don't.
So you could have been at Judalon Smith's house when the call came.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
You did visit Judalon Smith's house before you went there to stay on October 31st, didn't you?
I'm sorry?
You had visited Judalon Smith's house before October 31st.
Yes, I had.
Now, for how many nights did you stay at Judalon Smith's house commencing October 31st?
I don't recall, but it was several nights.
The next session that you had with Erik and Lyle was November 2nd, correct?
That's correct.
That was a Thursday.
That's correct.
And do you recall what you did that
That's
weekend?
exactly right,
the
Shereen.
weekend beginning
exactly what she's doing
November
here.
4th, Saturday, and November 5th, Sunday.
Yes, I certainly do.
Did you go to Newport Beach
I certainly did.
with Judalon Smith?
Yes, I did, with Judalon Smith.
I know Newport Beach.
On Monday, November 6th, 1989, did you purchase guns?
Yes, I did.
And what kind of guns did you purchase on Monday, November 6th?
Shotguns.
And how many shotguns did you purchase on Monday, November 6th?
To the best of my recollection, 3, although I don't recall whether I purchased all 3 at the same time or not.
I'm not sure.
Interesting.
And did anyone accompany you to make this shotgun purchase?
I don't recall. I think my wife did, but I don't recall.
And was this just something that happened on the spur of the moment? You and your wife were driving by the gun store and you said, hey, let's jump in there? Or did you plan to buy shotguns that day?
No, we decided to buy shotguns based upon the threats that we perceived were emanating with respect to Erik and Lyle.
Well, let me ask you this. When did you make the decision to buy the shotguns? Was it on November 6th, or was it the day before, or 2 days before, or 3 days before? When exactly did you decide?
There's no way for me to determine exactly the moment of decision to buy the shotguns. I don't know.
Do you think it was before the day that you actually bought them?
I don't know.
And this was a decision that you and your wife reached jointly?
I believe that that was a decision that we reached jointly.
And do you recall if you were at home when you made that decision?
To the best of my recollection, I was.
And therefore, in order to follow through on this decision, you had to leave home, go to a store that sold shotguns, buy shotguns, right?
To the best of my recollection.
Did you buy ammunition too?
Yes.
What kind?
I don't recall.
Do you know what load?
I don't even recall what load is, meaning...
Load is the size of the pellets that go into a shotgun shell.
No, I don't. I just, whatever the person said was normally used is what we bought.
And before you went to, did you go to a gun store, a sporting goods store, or what?
We went to,
Big Five?
I think, a Big Five sporting goods store.
Oh, they also went to Big Five. That's where the Menendez brothers went. Except they went in San Diego.
And when you got to the Big Five sporting goods store, did you ask whoever waited on you to explain shotguns to you or show you how they worked, or did you already know?
I don't recall having asked that person anything in particular.
You just said, I want 3 of those?
I think that I asked for whatever the least expensive shotgun was and simply asked for whatever cartridges fit, and that's it's a fit, for that particular shotgun. And to the best of my recollection, that's what happened.
Did you sign for the guns?
I believe so.
signed your name?
Yes, I believe I did.
Do you remember there were some forms that were being made out? Do you remember those forms?
I think there were some forms, but I don't recall what they were.
Do you remember any yellow forms?
I don't remember any particular forms. I remember there were forms, but I don't recall what the forms were.
And then you took these 3 shotguns and the ammunition you had bought back to your house?
I don't recall immediately what I did. I just recall that we bought the shotguns.
At some time on that day, Monday, November 6th, did you take one of those shotguns to Judalon Smith's house?
At some point, I did take one of the shotguns to Judalon Smith's house, believing as I...
Well, Your Honor, I would object to anything after the question is answered. That's not...
All right, you could have answered that one, yes.
Okay.
Could have.
Right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your next question.
And when I ask you, did you take a gun to Judalon Smith's house, did you leave one of the shotguns at Judalon Smith's house?
Yes, I did.
What time did the session with Erik and Lyle end on November the 2nd?
I don't recall.
Well, how long did it last?
I don't recall. Again, I don't have my session notes, so
You do have your session notes, don't you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
transcript?
I have my book in front of me. I'm not used to
Indeed.
having that. It says here 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. Is that right?
That's what it says.
Now, does that mean 3.5 hours, or does it mean 3.5 45-minute hours? I mean, is it a 60-minute hour or a 45-minute hour?
Well, I don't know. Meaning, she's written down, and the she is, it's not my handwriting, 3.5 hours. And usually 3.5 hours means 3.5 hours. It doesn't
Like
mean
normal 60-minute hours.
Right. Whereas 3.5 sessions usually would indicate 3.5 45-minute sessions, usually. But I don't know what she was thinking when she wrote this.
Well, maybe if you figure out how much you charged, we'd know. So we want to look at the ledger, 97. Okay, I want to look at 88. Look at 89. Okay, now showing you what's been marked 97B. And calling your attention to November the 2nd. You see that on there, don't you?
November 2nd, it says 3.5 hours.
And the billing is for $700. Is that right?
That's what it says.
And does that compute as 3.5 hours? I can't do that in my head.
Well, let's see. Each, give me a moment and I'll calculate it out.
You want a pen?
No, I think I can do it in my head.
Go ahead.
It does, roughly.
3.5 hours, not 3.5 sessions.
3.5 hours.
Okay. What time did it start? You have your book.
Well, I'm not sure that it started when it's written in the book because it's a Thursday. I have no other people scheduled and it's just written in the middle of the page.
So
So
they could have come in at any time.
I don't recall when they came in.
Okay, so whenever they came in, 3.5 hours roughly later, they leave.
That's correct.
And from that moment when they left on that day until the moment you bought shotguns on November 6th, had you spoken to or seen either Erik or Lyle?
No, to the best of my recollection, I hadn't.
Okay. But would it be accurate to say that between the time they left and the time that you purchased shotguns on Monday, November 6th, something had happened or not happened that increased your fear?
That certainly is correct.
Now, was the thing that had happened or not happened the fact that although during the session the brothers had told you they were going to go to Hawaii on vacation, you were unable to confirm that they had gone to Hawaii on vacation?
I wouldn't be able to answer the question the way you posed it.
Well, why don't we start with that question? Maybe we can move along. Had they told you they were going to Hawaii on vacation?
Yes, they had.
Had you given them recommendations of
Sorry,
places
guys.
to stay
You just
in
got
Hawaii?
home from
I think that
weekend
they
camp.
asked me for one recommendation for a place to stay on Hawaii. On the
And you
island of
gave it
Hawaii.
to them?
Just very
I did.
excited to be home.
Okay. Did you attempt to verify after that session whether or not they had, first of all, gone on vacation?
Yes, I did.
And were you unable to verify it?
Specifically,
Were you unable
can't
to
answer
verify?
the question that way.
Fine. But you went and bought shotguns on November 6th, right?
That's correct.
And would it be accurate to say that you received no communicated threat from them directly, nor from the mail, nor from anyone else saying they're going to get you, or anything like that, between the last time you saw them on November 2nd and the purchase of the shotguns
Thank you,
on
Sandra.
November 6th?
Very kind of you.
A communicated threat.
Overruled.
I perceive that I received a communicated threat.
Oh, tell the juries what the threat was.
Okay.
Describe,
I will be. I will.
not other things, the threat.
There wasn't a specific threatened communication, but there
Okay,
was
you've answered-
information that was threatening.
He's answered the question you and I, well, never mind.
All right, had you finished your answer?
If the court,
You can say yes or no. Had you finished your answer?
no.
Well, Your Honor, I think that does answer the question, and anything else I believe would call for hearsay. And I will lay a foundation for that, if you will. You talked to somebody else, right?
Yes, I did.
You talked to a relative, right?
That's correct.
The relative said she didn't know they were going out of town, right?
That's not correct.
All right. But the relative told you something,
She certainly did.
and that's what frightened you even more.
That's correct.
Okay.
We clarify relative of whom?
You spoke to their grandmother.
That's correct.
She didn't threaten you, did she?
No, she didn't threaten me.
Okay. So I think that
Now, let's fast forward ahead here for a moment.
there was a
I'd so-
question earlier about like what's the relevance of this line of questioning. The thing about it is that they are trying to get to how threatened did he really feel. Obviously, feeling like you need to go and arm yourself to, have guns at your house in case somebody shows up with their own shotguns or whatever, whether those are shotguns or some other kind of firearm. To me, it was a little strange that it was the same exact kind of like firearm as what the Menendez brothers had used on their parents. But regardless, I mean, that's the basic idea is that, this is somebody who felt afraid enough that he went and bought 3 firearms for use ostensibly in his home. I think he said exclusively in his home, but I don't know if he also intended to have them in his office. But so the point that the defense is trying to get to here is to say, look, you talked to a family member. They said this other thing. And like, for some reason you're saying that you felt threatened by that. You talked to their grandmother. She didn't threaten you, right? No, she didn't threaten me. She said something about them being out of town. So that's really what she's trying to get at, is like just how legitimate, like was he going and buying these firearms after the fact so that he could kind of bolster his decision to tell people about them admitting to him about what they did? Is that what he did? Was he just kind of like thought on the back end, well, I better make some moves that I can say, well, obviously I was afraid because I bought guns, right? Or did he just do that on the back end, like I said, to bolster it? So that's really what she's trying to get at. By the way, Cherry C. Mills, thanks so much for the member chat. It says, hi, Alita. Hope you're well. I am well. Thank you so much. I hope you're doing well as well. Thanks so much for being here and hanging out. And also thanks to Sandra Ramirez. I saw in the chat that you're in the hospital for some treatments, and here you are still gifting memberships to people. That's so, so kind of you. So very generous of you. Thank you so much. And I hope you're not in too much pain with whatever's going on. And I hope that you can get that all fixed up and resolved so you can get out of there as soon as possible. No one likes being there. So, anyhow, but yes, thank you so much. That is so, so very kind of you. But basically, Yeah. So this is what they're getting at is she's trying to poke holes in the legitimacy of him saying that he genuinely feared for his life.
At some point, okay, at some point, you found out, did you not, that in fact they had gone on vacation. They just didn't go where they told you they were going, right?
No, I don't recall that.
You don't recall ever?
Wait,
I'm sorry.
one thing at a time. We have an objection. Objections overruled. The answer will stand.
Thank you. You never found out that in fact either of the Menendez brothers had gone on vacation. Is that what you're saying?
Also a good
I'm
point,
saying
yeah.
that I don't
Also a
recall
good point.
having found out they went on vacation during that specific time period. I don't recall that.
Anytime during the month of November, did you ever learn that they had gone on vacation during the month of November?
Don't have a recollection of that.
But I take it, given your high state of anxiety and fear, the fact that they hadn't gone where you thought they had gone just made you more fearful, made you worried. Would that be accurate?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. Isn't that why you left town also? You were so frightened you went to Newport. You didn't even want to be in LA.
That's not that far.
Your Honor, well, I didn't get a chance to respond to your first
if
question.
you can't answer the question or you don't understand, just say, I can't answer it. I don't
Can't answer
understand."
that question.
Okay, fine. Now, later in the month of November, after November 6th, did you also take steps to increase or change or fix or something to the security system at your home?
Yes, we took a number of measures to increase the security at our home.
To the best of your knowledge, Dr. Oziel, when were our clients arrested?
Sometime in March, but I don't recall when, I believe.
Sometime in March of 1990.
I'm guessing. You would certainly know the date. I don't
I
know the
move
date.
to strike that,
I
Your
don't know the
Honor. As what I know or don't know is,
Objection overruled. The answer will stand.
Okay.
Your next question, please.
were they arrested after that search warrant was served on your house, if you know?
Yes.
Now, do you know whether or not the security system on your home was fixed on November the 19th?
No, I wouldn't recall the exact date that it was fixed.
Between the date of November, I'll strike that, between the date of October 31st, 1989, and March 8th, 1990, the day of the search warrant, to the best of your knowledge, did either Erik or Lyle break into your house?
No, they did not, to the best of my knowledge.
To the best of your knowledge, did they ever come to Miss Smith's house?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
You never saw them there.
No, I didn't.
And nobody else ever reported to you that they had seen them there.
No one did.
And I take it no one ever harmed you physically, nor any member of your family, nor Miss Smith. Is that right?
I would say that would be accurate physically.
Do you right now, as you sit here today, Dr. Oziel, feel harmed by the Menendez brothers?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, you just said, no, not physically. So I assume there was some other kind of harm that you had in the back of your mind. Am I correct?
What I meant to say by that is that obviously there's been a lot of distress in relationship to all this, fear,
Yes.
things of that nature.
You
Yes.
have suffered, and your family has suffered a lot of distress. Is that true?
I would say that there's been distress that's been significant. Yes.
Very significant, hasn't it?
Fairly significant, yes.
You got a lot of publicity that you didn't particularly like as a result of this case. Wouldn't that be a truthful statement?
I said I would think that that would be a truthful statement.
And you wound up in a fair amount of litigation that I'm sure you would have rather avoided, but for this. Isn't that a fair statement?
I think that's a very fair statement.
And has that litigation cost you personally any money?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, can I be heard on that?
Go on to something else and we'll come back to it.
Now, I'm correct, am I not, in assuming, Dr. Oziel, that you certainly don't blame yourself for causing any of this distress or any of this harm or any of this litigation or trouble or bad press. It's not your fault, is it?
That's irrelevant.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I would like to be heard.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Dr. Oziel, let me ask you this question. Do you blame yourself for all these troubles?
I blame no one for all these troubles.
Just fate. Is that it?
To a great extent.
Now, you've testified that Erik Menendez knew where you lived. Is that right?
That's correct.
In fact, didn't you use your home address on all of your billing envelopes to all of your patients?
It was not identified as my home address to any of my patients. So yes, I did, but it was not identified.
Said Longbridge Avenue, right?
Did not identify that it was my home.
It said Longbridge Avenue, didn't it?
Did in fact.
And
say
what was
Longbridge
the
Avenue.
township?
Sherman Oaks.
Sherman Oaks.
That's
okay?
correct.
And it wouldn't take very long for someone to figure out that Longbridge Avenue in Sherman Oaks is an upper middle class residential street and not a business zone, would it?
I wouldn't know. I'd be speculating.
Didn't look like a business district while you were living there, did it?
If you were on the street, it didn't.
And every one of your patients, therefore, had your address in which to send their payments to, correct?
They had it for the purpose of sending in payments, yes.
And in fact, the main office of your business, at least for record-keeping purposes, I believe you've already told us, was in that house on Longbridge Avenue, correct?
That's correct.
But in fact, you recall, do you not, that Erik actually came to your home on an occasion to pick something up from you? True?
Kitty and Erik both came. That's
Okay.
correct.
And what he came to pick up from you is a report you had written for him. Is that right?
That's correct.
I mean, there is something to this idea that he's been pretty free about giving his home address to all of his clients, essentially, up until this point. If you're giving therapy to people, ostensibly, there's always at least a possibility that someone can have an issue that is big enough that it can cause problems if they bring that to your home. So that is interesting to me that he was so free and open with that kind of information before this point. And so, of course, what Leslie Abramson is trying to do here is to say, well, you weren't really that afraid because you gave your information to all of these people for years before this point.
Dr. Oziel, you've already testified that on November 1st, and the book's right in front of you, you did go into your office in Beverly Hills and you did see patients. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And that office of yours in Beverly Hills, would you describe for the jury what the physical setup is?
To the best of my ability. The office is laid out such that there's a waiting room when you, by the way, I'm not in that office currently, so I'm describing a former office, so that there's a waiting room as you walk in, and it's sort of L-shaped. There then is a door, which is a locked door that leads from the waiting room into the consultation sessions, the session rooms, and the session rooms are laid out so that there is immediately one consultation office as one walks down the corridor. Then it's an L, walk down a longer corridor, maybe 20 feet or so from the waiting room door that is closed. And then there is a session door that actually leads into my office being the furthest office away from the waiting room, there being 2 consultation offices between my office and the waiting room door, which is locked with respect to people coming out the street.
Do other psychotherapists use the other 2 offices during the day, or did they then?
Yes, other psychotherapists did.
And who were the other psychotherapists who used those other offices in or around November 1st, 1989?
There were several that I can think of off the top of my head. I can't tell you the totality of all the therapists.
Why don't you just tell us what you remember?
I'd be happy to.
Go ahead.
Dr. Dennis Munjak used one of the offices. I believe that Dr. Deborah Phillips used one of the other offices. And I think that she also shared that office with my wife, who's a psychotherapist, Laurel Oziel. And there were several other part-time psychiatrists, psychologists, who also, from time to time, used those offices.
Was one gentleman with the last name Solomon? Richard Solomon?
To the best of my recollection, Richard Solomon wasn't in use of those offices anytime near the time that I was seeing the Menendezes.
Well, did he ever use those offices during the time that you used them?
I don't even know that he ever used my office. He might have used an office in that suite sometime in the past 15 years.
Do you know Richard Solomon?
Yes, I do.
Is he a psychotherapist?
Yes, he is.
Did he ever use any of the offices in that suite?
I believe he did.
Now, did you on either October 31st or November 1st give any kind of warning or caution to Dr. Phillips or Dr. Munjak?
Yes, I did.
And who did you warn and when?
I don't recall when I warned them. I think I warned them as soon as possible after the events transpired.
Who?
And Dr. Munjak and Dr. Phillips.
Okay.
And the warning that I gave them was that there could potentially be a dangerous patient situation, and they should be especially sure to make sure that the premises were secured. And if they felt that they wanted to take any steps to increase their own security, that they should feel free to do that.
And who did you tell them were the potentially, dangerous patients?
I didn't tell them.
And what did you tell them the potentially dangerous patients looked like?
Didn't tell them.
So you didn't tell them anything that would let them protect themselves if
That's also
these potentially dangerous persons showed up, did you?
That's also an
No, what I
interesting point.
specifically told them was that if they felt that there was some need for them to take any special measures to protect the offices more or protect themselves more, that they should feel free to do that. And that, in my view, that the situation was extremely dangerous and they should do whatever they thought was necessary to protect their security in relationship to the office.
Did they do anything different?
I don't know. I didn't ask them.
And did they ask you, well, how dangerous? What are we talking about here?
Yes, they did.
And did you tell them?
Yes, I said it was very dangerous.
Well, did you tell them I'm talking murder here?
I don't think I said any words to that effect.
You
I don't-
didn't tell them that what you were talking about was that a patient had confessed what you have described as murder to you, did you?
I don't really recall whether I did or I didn't. I know that they definitely got the, from their response.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to their response. Now, did you, after October 31st, were there ever occasions when, because of your fear, you sought to have yourself escorted to the parking lot?
There may have been one occasion. I don't recall having had that happen more than once.
Do you know when that would have been?
I don't recall whether it was on November 2nd or whether it was October 31st, but it was one
One
of
of
those
those 2 days.
Yes, it was.
But you didn't do that after those 2 days.
I don't recall it.
Let me get back for a moment to the purchase of shotguns. Was there some reason, strike that. Before you went to purchase the shotguns, had you and your wife decided it was going to be shotguns, or was it just going to be guns?
No, we decided that it was going to be shotguns.
Why did you decide that?
We decided.
Rather than ask you that open a question, let's do this.
Yes. If you want to withdraw the question, you may do that,
Yes.
and you may ask another question.
Let me withdraw that question. Did you consider any other kind of guns before you decided shotguns?
Yes.
Okay. What other kinds of guns did you consider?
Pistols.
And was there some reason why you didn't purchase pistols and you purchased shotguns?
Yes.
And was that the 2-week waiting period under California law?
Well, no. Well, partially. I have to. I can answer that question this way.
No.
No.
Let's
No,
just.
it's partially correct, and so the answer is yes. And is that acceptable, Your Honor?
Yes and no.
Well, it's yes and yes, partial. Yes and no.
All right. These are all areas that if other counsel want to go into, they can do that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you also fear that shotguns had greater firepower than pistols?
I'm sorry. Did I fear it?
No. Did you feel?
Oh,
I'm
did I
sorry.
feel it?
Feel that shotgun? Did that enter into the equation?
No. I don't know that much about shotguns.
Did you ever practice with the shotguns that you bought that day to see if you could actually get it to go boom?
No, I did not.
And where did you keep it once you had it in your home?
Different places.
Did you move it around on purpose based on your assessment of threat or fear?
From time to time, I did move the shotguns.
Let me talk to you for a moment, Dr. Oziel, before we turn to the sessions themselves, about your billing practices to the extent you are familiar with them. With respect to your regular patients, you hold appointment time for them from week to week. Is that right?
I will say, now I was thinking about this just now. I think the fact that he never practiced with them is potentially, I think that would be problematic for him. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with that. But it seems problematic for him to say that he bought them because he feared the Menendez brothers coming to his house. Because I would think that if you buy something, you buy a certain tool for a certain purpose because you're afraid and you want to protect yourself, you would want to know how to use it. Because otherwise, how are you going to protect yourself with it if you don't know how to use it? So it seems strange to me that he wouldn't have practiced it. He's coming across as just somebody who's very unfamiliar with guns, which is another question in my head is then what are you doing owning a gun? If you are completely unfamiliar, you shouldn't be buying guns. You need to educate yourself on these very dangerous tools that you bring into your home. But I'm a little bit critical of him on that. It does seem like he bought these guns just to say that he bought them for protection. If he didn't actually go to practice with them to say, just in case I need these, in case I need to actually use these, I've got to know what to do. Like it seems very natural that that's one of the first things that he would have then gone and done. So, yeah, I see some agreement in the chat. Yeah, Tony, and this is an interesting point. Tony P says, not sure how familiar he is with other firearms. A shotgun is very simple to operate in most cases. Yeah, but it's also very big, and And in terms of like learning how to operate it, I think that's more intimidating to operate than a smaller handgun is. I'm just saying from like my own experience, when I learned how to shoot guns in my teens, shotgun was like my least favorite one to try out whenever I would have like I would go on like shooting weekends with friends where like we would learn how to how to shoot all kinds of different firearms and stuff and throw hatchets and all kinds of stuff. But like, yeah, so for me, like shotgun was always my least favorite because of the kickback that you would get. It was always a little painful for me. You really had to learn how to hold it and not get a bruised shoulder. And so for me, like I was always like, ugh, like I wasn't that fond of shotguns. So I don't know. So it seems like that's the, I don't know. I personally wouldn't want to go with that, with a lesser familiarity with it. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, so we've got some agreement in the chat. But if you had never used it, surely it would just be an expensive stick. True. I mean, you could also have a baseball bat, right? Cross Stitch Phoenix. Yeah, I wouldn't want a gun if I didn't know how to use it properly. Yeah, exactly. Little Nerd One. Do not touch a gun until you know what to do with it, until you know how. Yeah. So yeah. Janny Wallace. As someone brought up in the UK, I would be scared to touch a gun because of my inexperience with them. I mean, I totally understand that. I totally understand that as well. So, man. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. But these are just my thoughts on like, I don't know if I'm buying the whole I bought the guns because I was actually intimidated. I was afraid for my life, kind of thing. Because I personally would think that he would have tested them out, learned how to use them, learned how to care for them, learn how to properly store them instead of just like having them in random parts of his house. It seems very, very haphazard and not very well thought through. And also the psychology of it doesn't seem to match someone who legitimately thinks that there's a good chance that he might have to use them to protect himself and his family. Okay, let's continue.
Yes.
And if a regular patient is going to be unavailable for an appointment, they're supposed to let you know that in order to avoid being billed for the time, a certain amount of time before the appointment. Is that right?
Well, actually, any patient who makes an appointment and who doesn't give me enough notice is billed for the time if they cancel the appointment or don't show up for the appointment.
What's enough notice?
It's just enough notice such that I could fill the time or enough notice. It's a minimum of 24 hours.
Okay, let's get to this. The minimum notice is 24 hours. So it's got to be 24 hours or better, right?
Yes.
And if a patient were to call 24 hours in advance and say, I just broke my leg, I can't make it, and you couldn't find anybody else to fill the space, would you bill them anyway?
No, the billing policy is such that if someone has a literal emergency, an illness, or their car breaks down on the freeway or whatever it is, then the agreement with the patient at the beginning of therapy is that they wouldn't be billed for emergencies. And they also wouldn't be billed for a certain number of vacations with adequate notice that they take. And other than that, they're normally responsible for all sessions, which is standard therapeutic practice to bill people in that way.
Let's go back. Let's say they call you the morning of the appointment, so we don't have 24 hours, and they broke their leg. Is there an emergency exception even if it's within the 24 hours?
Ordinarily, there would be, or it's supposed to be.
What if someone calls you 24 hours in advance and says, I don't feel like it this week? Okay? That's not an emergency, is it?
No, it isn't.
That's avoiding therapy, right?
I would just not categorize it as an emergency.
Right. And so would you bill that person?
Ordinarily.
If you filled the spot with another patient, would you bill them both?
If in fact they had a regular time or I was reserving a time for them on my schedule, yes, I would bill the person and then offer them a makeup, which is my normal practice.
But if they either couldn't or didn't make up, they would pay for the time, and the patient who was substituted in would pay for the time too.
If the time was filled, that would be correct, but the person who would be substituted in would ordinarily be somebody else who was in my schedule who had missed a time who I was offering a makeup time to.
Either that, or maybe there's a new patient on the horizon, somebody who never had a session with you before, and you could fill that person in, right?
Yeah.
That happens too.
Very, very rarely. The reality is that I had a waiting list, and often have a waiting list of people that I can't accept as a new patient unless I have a regular open time to see them, because virtually all people in my practice, in fact, almost everyone in my practice, has a regular weekly time that they see me, which is the standard in psychotherapy. So you can't take somebody off a waiting list and just, plug them into a gap in the schedule, and then next week say, I know I saw you last week and for a consultation, but I don't have any time to see you anymore. That was just plugging in an open time. So that's really not considered proper, and it's not what I do.
There's a fair number of cancellations and no-shows in any given week on your schedule, are there not?
Objection Bank is a fair number, and also as to time.
Overall, just in general.
I don't think there's a fair number. There are some.
And are you saying that what you do is you just juggle patients who had other slots and missed appointments and to fill in those spaces when people cancel or don't show?
I try to, or the office is instructed to do that.
Now, if people just flat out don't show without giving you any notice, you obviously charge them for the time.
That's correct.
Let's turn to October 31st, and because of the way the evidence has been presented, I'm going to first question you about things that occurred when both Erik and Lyle were there together, okay?
Did you want me to take out my transcript?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. I have it.
I don't want you to read it just yet, unless I just want to set the stage. You were alone with Erik in your office when you made this call to Lyle. Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you make the call from a telephone in the consultation room?
Yes, I did.
And was Erik present when you made the call?
Yes, he was.
And when you made the call, did you call the home on Elm Drive?
Best of my recollection, I did.
And did Lyle answer the phone?
I don't remember whether Lyle answered the phone or somebody else answered the phone, but I did talk with Lyle.
Did he sound surprised to hear from you?
I don't recall his initial response when
Had you ever talked to Lyle on the telephone before?
don't recall whether I had or hadn't.
Now, you didn't tell Lyle anything on the telephone about, factually, about your conversation with Erik up until that point. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by factually.
You didn't relay to Lyle any specific fact or facts that Erik had told you. Isn't that true?
Well, I did say
Well,
that
don't tell us what you say. If you cannot answer the question, say you cannot answer the question, okay?
I cannot answer the question.
All right. You understand, Dr. Oziel, we've had you testify in front of 3 different configurations of the jury. One jury, another jury.
All right,
both jurors.
counsel, let's ask questions, and if there's any need to instruct the witness, you can request the court to do it.
Okay, would the court instruct the witness then not to volunteer any kind of hearsay information unless it's called for in the question?
All right, just ask the question, and we'll deal with it as the questions are being asked.
Now, when Lyle, but how long a period of time elapsed between your calling Lyle and his getting to the office?
Approximately 10 to 15 minutes, best of my recollection.
And without relaying any conversation, during those 10 to 15 minutes, were you and Erik talking or were you and Erik silent?
Oh, we were talking.
And were you talking behind the closed door of this consultation room down the long corridor of the L that you have previously described to the jury?
That's to my recollection, we were.
And the door was closed to that room, correct?
Yes, it was.
Was it locked?
I don't recall whether are you talking about the door,
To the consultation room.
the actual door to the consultation room? I don't recall if the actual door to the consultation room was locked.
And so you and Erik are in there talking for 10 or 15 minutes. How did you know Lyle was there when he got there?
When Lyle got there, I asked Erik to watch for the light because actually the patient's chair, wasn't a very well constructed office. The patient's chair is situated such that when a patient comes in, the patient presses a button that turns on a light in the office. But the light that it turns on in the office is actually behind the chair that I formerly sat in that office. So I asked Erik to notify me when the light went on. And so when the light went on, I went out and opened the door for Lyle, and Lyle came in.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. So a light went on. That's how you knew Lyle was there. Is that right?
Erik told me the light went on, yes.
Okay. And did you look and verify light was on?
Yes,
And that's a signal. People come in the waiting room to let you know they're there. They punch something and the light goes on.
that's correct.
So you left the office.
Well, I went to the office and opened the door for Lyle to come in, yes.
Which door did you open for Lyle to come in?
I had to open two doors. One
so you
door.
left the consultation room office.
Yes, I left the consultation room office to let Lyle in.
And you had to go to the door that led from the waiting room. Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you wait any measurable period of time after Erik told you the light went on before you went to get Lyle?
I don't recall having waited any measurable length of time.
And then you got Lyle and he walked down those long corridors and back into that consultation room with you. Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you close that door leading to the waiting room after you met with Lyle?
Yes, I did.
Were you expecting any other patients that night?
No, I wasn't.
What time was it?
I don't recall the time.
And you got back into the consultation room and you closed that door. Is that right?
That's correct.
How old was Lyle Menendez at that time?
How old was Lyle Menendez at that time?
If you know.
I don't know.
How old was Erik?
I don't know.
How far had Erik gone in his education as of October 1989?
I believe that he was in high school, but I don't. I think that he was in his senior year at high school.
Would you characterize yourself, Dr. Oziel, as an articulate person?
I don't think that I would characterize myself in any particular way at all.
Well, if I were to ask you, are you articulate? You'd say,
That's presumptuous on my part, and I wouldn't respond to that.
oh.
That's a decent
sorry.
answer.
So you're not articulate.
Excuse me, Anna, could we strike counsels before this comment?
Yes, let's just ask
Yeah.
questions and not make editorial comment, please.
Are you comfortable
Decent
in
answer.
using the English language?
Yes, I feel comfortable using the English language.
Do you think you have an extensive vocabulary?
I think I have a serviceable vocabulary, yes.
Do you think you had, as of October 1989, a more extensive vocabulary than Erik Menendez, a senior in high school?
Probably.
Okay, where is this going?
Now, we have established, haven't we, Dr. Oziel, that at the time you dictated the tape from which those notes were transcribed, whether that was 1 week or 2 weeks later, you had absolutely nothing in writing to refresh your memory of what was said. True?
To the best of my recollection, that's true.
And I have looking over, strike that, Your Honor, in looking over that transcript, isn't it also true that it does not purport to be direct quotes from either Erik or Lyle or you?
As to which session you're talking about, October 31st?
October 31st.
I'm looking at the transcript. The entire transcript is not represented as a verbatim quotation. However, much of what is in the transcript was my best attempt to specify exactly what was said to me.
All right. Look, there's two things here, are there not? Number one, it doesn't purport to be verbatim the words that either Erik or Lyle used in talking, correct?
That's incorrect.
Purport means representing itself to be. It doesn't represent itself to be verbatim, does it? But you just said that. It's not verbatim.
A lot of the sentences are verbatim. Some of them are not verbatim.
Most of them are not in quotes, correct?
It is correct that most of these statements don't have quotation marks around them.
Thank you. Now, is it your testimony that most of what's in this transcript is in the exact words that Erik and Lyle used?
Objection vague.
Why don't you rephrase the question, please?
Okay. Are most of the words that are represented here for the October 31st session the identical and exact words that Erik and Lyle used?
Most of the statements attributed to Erik and Lyle are as close as possible to being the exact words that Erik and Lyle used in my recollection.
Is that no? They're not the exact words, they're just as close as possible?
Objection vague.
Overruled.
No.
Is that yes, they are the
Counsel, let him
exact
finish
words?
the answer. He was in the process of responding.
Judge is definitely getting annoyed with her.
A significant percentage of the statements attributed to Erik and Lyle are as near as possible my exact recollection as to what they said. And I can't represent that every single word that I recalled is exactly correct and that I have a perfect memory and that there were no errors whatsoever in my memory. But when I dictated these notes, it was with the intention of recreating what Erik and Lyle said to me as exactly and as verbatim as I could, except in instances where I was discussing my own perceptions and my own observations or opinions and conclusions, which were not intended to be representations of verbatim quotes from Erik and Lyle.
You understand, Dr. Oziel, that in this trial, both of these juries have either already heard or...
Counsel, again, let's ask a question in a appropriate fashion here.
Is any of the statements that you attribute, let's start with Erik, in Erik's vocabulary and syntactical style, is that what you're saying? That they are?
Yes, I'm saying some of them are.
You're saying most of them are, is that true?
Well, in order to do that, Ms. Abramson, what I'd have to do is go through every single statement in this transcript and assess, exactly what percentage were and were not verbatim.
Well, let's go to this one. Turn to page 3. First paragraph in page 3. Let me just consult. Skip ahead to page 10.
Yeah, his session notes are always very far away from
Now look at the last
The actual
paragraph on
appointment.
page 10.
So she's
Which conversation
right
are
to
we
dig
referring
into
to?
them.
Which session are we referring to then?
Well, we're trying to talk about syntax, Your Honor. Page 10 refers to November 2nd.
Is that, well, let's ask the witness that. You're not the witness.
True.
Ask the witness.
Page 10 refers to November 2nd, doesn't it?
Page 10 appears to refer to November 2nd.
Now, look at the last paragraph on page 10, and let's start with this question. You already testified to this information. What that paragraph purports to say is how Erik and Lyle felt about their father and why they felt they had to kill him. True?
I'm not sure where you're reading from.
The last paragraph
Yes.
on page 10. Yes?
Okay. Yes.
And then it goes on to page 11, the rest of that paragraph, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, isn't that paragraph on page 10 where you wrote or you dictated, they had always known that they had hated their father and that they had felt that they had to kill him due to the fact that he totally controlled them, made them feel inadequate and inferior, dominated them, and preached a higher moral level at the same time that he talked about other people, et cetera, et cetera. Now, haven't you previously testified that was a summary of different things that each of the boys said over the course of a measurable period of time in talking about their father?
With that particular statement, yes, that's correct.
And it is a summary put in your words, is it not?
I didn't state that.
Well, I'm asking you, did Erik sit there and say, my father made me feel inadequate and inferior? Is that what he said?
I think I testified that Erik did use the words inadequate or inferior at points during the session. I'm not stating, and I didn't testify, that he strung together all of those words in one sentence as a summary, and I think I've testified that was my summary of what he said.
So you strung the words together, is that correct?
That's correct.
And isn't that true in more than just that one place in the portions of the transcript that you've testified to? That in many places in this transcript, you are summarizing, stringing the words together.
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as stringing the words together. What I'm summarizing are the things that Erik and Lyle told me over a very long period of time, a period of time that I believe was 4.5 hours. And some of these paragraphs or some of these statements are, in fact, summaries of the things that they said in the course of a much longer period of time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And so I absolutely, there are other sentences that are summaries of things that they stated to me.
So let's say there was a 20-minute discussion, you would write a summary in which you would take what you believe to be the salient features of that or the important points about that, and you string together these words to describe what you thought the theme was or the main features. Isn't that what you did for some of the stuff in here?
It's correct. For some of these statements here, that's what occurred.
Now, what efforts did you make to check? As you're hearing from them, what efforts did you make to check, if anything, any of the facts that they were giving you?
I don't understand what you mean by that.
Well, I'll focus you, for example. You have testified that on November 2nd, when both of our clients were present, that there was a lengthy discussion about their mother and how miserable she was and what a victim she was and how suicidal she was. Those things. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you, now, you knew Mrs. Menendez, correct?
That's correct.
Had she ever told you she was miserable, suicidal, and depressed?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you make any effort whatsoever after November 2nd to verify whether, based on what Lyle and Erik were telling you, Kitty Menendez, in fact, had been suicidal, miserable, depressed.
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
No, I didn't at that point investigate whether she was miserable, depressed, and suicidal.
Did you investigate it at any subsequent point?
I didn't investigate it, but I did.
Then you've answered the question.
Okay.
As a matter of common practice, if a patient says to you, I broke my leg when I was 7 and it ruined my life, would you try, or words to something like that, this happened to me, and I think it had a very big effect. Do you make any effort to check to see if they're telling you the truth?
Objection vague and irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, I'd like to be heard on that, Your Honor.
Why don't you go on to something else?
Ooh. Judge says nope.
Now, you've testified that after Lyle arrived, he was upset and he made a statement that now that you knew, it wasn't a perfect murder anymore. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Now, you also testified that before Lyle arrived, Erik told you it was a perfect murder, didn't you?
I believe so.
I want you to look at the notes for October 31st, for that portion before Lyle arrives, which, by the way, Lyle arrives at page 6, and find in those notes Erik's statement that it was a perfect murder.
Ms. Abramson, I think
Excuse
I
me,
testified.
could you just look and see if it's there?
You're asking about prior to the arrival of Lyle Menendez?
Indeed, Your Honor.
I don't think that the actual transcription shows the word perfect in relationship to Erik having said it prior to Lyle's arrival.
All right, now, my question then is, it does not appear in the notes, does it?
It doesn't appear in these notes.
Okay. Now, however, isn't it true that before you called Lyle, now, isn't it true, Dr. Oziel, that in fact what happened was after Erik had spoken to you, you
This is in front of
concluded
both juries.
that
To answer your question,
in
Jan
your
Wall.
mind, the Menendez brothers had a perfect situation where no one would discover them. And in your ruminations, you thought the only weakness would be if someone knew information. Wasn't that your internal thought process at that point before you called Lyle?
No, it wasn't.
Calling court and counsel's attention to the in-camera transcript, June 15th, 1990, page 36. And I propose to read from line 21.
What page? Page?
36, Your Honor. Actually, I propose to read from line 23. Well, let me approach and tell the court what I want to do before I start doing it and someone objects.
Wait a second. All right, counsel, you may approach. All right, we'll resume at 1:30, ladies and gentlemen. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We will resume at 1:30.
Okay.
In the trial, the defendants and all counsel and both juries are present, and we'll resume with the examination of the witness. Dr. Oziel, you may continue the cross-examination.
Dr. Oziel, would you turn to page 10 of your notes? Now, we were talking this morning about this paragraph here, which is this summary of these reasons that you indicate Lyle and Erik gave you for killing their father. He totally controlled them, made them feel inadequate and inferior, dominated them. Correct?
Oh, that's correct.
All right. Now, did they, in the course of this session on November 2nd, or in the course of the previous session when they were together on October 31st, give you any examples of how their father controlled or dominated or did these things when they were little?
I'm trying to recall.
Well, let's start with a preliminary question. There's no examples in these notes of the way their father treated them when they were little kids in this document in front of you, is there?
I don't recall that there is any.
And do you recall it even coming up in the course of this discussion that you say you've memorialized here on either October 31st or November 2nd?
No. If the question you're asking, well, can you repeat the question?
Did either Lyle or Erik on either November 2nd when they were together or October 31st when they were together give you any examples of how their father totally controlled them, made them feel inadequate and inferior, and dominated them and preached a higher moral level that referred to when they were little children?
Can you define little children?
Under 12.
I don't recall them having talked about what happened when they were under 12.
Now, they told you, well, let me ask you this. You testified, I think, in effect, that the boys were confused by their father.
That's correct.
They were confused about whether he was a moral person or an immoral person. Was that what you're talking about here?
I think that they simply said that their father was a confusing man. And I think that when I asked them, that they said that they saw him as being predominantly moral and didn't know of any behavior that he had taken that was immoral. We had a discussion.
Well, before you go on,
Yes.
Before that, there was a previous discussion. Weren't you told that their father had said to them that if he had been in charge of China when the Chinese rebelled, what he would have done, and this was in reference to Tiananmen Square, what he would have done was to have lied to all the people, get them all under his control, and then kill them all.
That's correct.
Now, that sounded very immoral to you, did it not?
To me, it sounded outrageously immoral.
And it seemed very immoral to Erik and Lyle as well, did it not? To succor these people and mow them all down?
You know, I don't know what Erik and Lyle were feeling, except they gave that as an example to me of their father's system of operation. They didn't characterize it as being immoral, but it certainly seemed to me to be outrageously immoral.
Well, didn't it come at the end of this discussion where he made them feel inadequate and inferior, dominated them, and preached a higher moral level? This is what he preached. While at the same time, he talked about other people as if they were sheep, and he talked about what he would have done if he was in China in charge of the rebellion in Tiananmen Square.
Well, let me answer it this
Well,
way.
is that what's written here?
I'm actually trying to clarify in a positive sense what was happening.
Is that what's written here?
Well, Counsel, you asked a lengthy question. Are you asking?
It is kind of a lengthy
specifically,
question.
The words
I will
that
say
are
that.
on the page or something beyond that?
Well, right now I'm just trying to authenticate, Your Honor.
Well, why don't you just read the words then?
I just
If
did.
that's- if those exact words that are on the page, is that what you're
Well, I
asking?
can read them all over again and get the exact words.
Maybe I can respond to the question. You can.
Why don't we withdraw the question? We'll start all over again. Okay, we'll start with, they had always known that they had hated their father and that they had felt that they had to kill him due to the fact that he totally controlled them, made them feel inadequate and inferior, dominated them, and preached a higher moral level at the same time that he talked about other people as being sheep and them as being the shepherds, and also talked about the notion that if the Chinese had rebelled under him in China, that what he would have done was to lie to them, appease them, get them all under his control, and then kill them all. Now, is that what's written here?
Absolutely.
And therefore, the way this is written, the inference is it not that these behaviors, talking about other people being sheep and what he would have done in China, is at odds with Mr. Menendez's preaching a higher moral level?
It certainly is written that way, and I believe that the context in which it was spoken by Erik and Lyle was to contrast confusing messages from their father. All I was meaning to state is that I don't recall them as having specifically characterized it with words as saying that it was immoral, but I do believe that that's the inference.
Okay, that was an example they were giving you from their current life of how morally confusing he was, correct?
I think it was.
Now, was there any discussion during these two sessions when the two brothers were together about how their mother would in any way soften or ameliorate or lessen the damage that this controlling, dominating, belittling father did? Is there any discussion here at all about what mom did for them?
No, there were specific discussions, but not about what mom did for them to soften anything.
Were there any discussions or any mention by either one of them when they're talking about how harsh and domineering their father was, about how their mother would comfort them?
No, I don't believe so.
In talking about their mother, based on what's in these notes, it appears that the only person, we'll strike that, it appears that the only relationship in the family that they talk about with the mother is the mother's relationship with the father. Is that correct?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well, they talk, do they not, about the mother being the father's victim, correct?
Yes.
And as far as Erik is concerned, that's the only discussion you've ascribed to him, that the mother was the father's victim, correct?
I don't recall if that's the only description that I ascribed to him in these transcribed notes.
There is no actual, in these notes, there's no mention by Erik of any criticism of his mother at all.
There may not be. I just don't know.
Now, you said that each of them talked about writing a book about their father. Is that right?
That's correct.
And your, I guess, sense was that it was going to be an extremely praiseworthy book, right?
It wasn't my sense. It was their statement.
They said
Their
it's going
statements.
to be an extremely praiseworthy book? These
No,
two said that?
I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, they said they were going to write a book.
That's correct.
You characterized that the tone of that book would be extremely praiseworthy, correct?
I think yes, I did.
And that's based on whatever it was they actually said to you, the sense that you got was extremely praiseworthy, correct?
That's correct.
Now, was it supposed to be a novel?
I don't think it was supposed to be a novel. It's not the
Did you think
recollection I have.
that if it was, I'm sorry.
No, that's not the recollection that I have.
Well, I recollect that. Well, I recollect that Ms. Bazanich asked you a question at 9388, line 23, volume 61.
Page 9, please.
9388, starting with your question at line 23. Do you recall Ms. Bazanich saying to you Wednesday, now, did they indicate to you at that point one of the reasons, in light of this novel that they wanted to write, one of the reasons they had killed him? Do you remember her asking you if it was a novel?
I didn't listen that carefully to the word novel.
Okay. Did you think that if they were going to write an extremely praiseworthy book about their father, that if it were not a novel, it would still have to be fictional for it to be extremely praiseworthy?
I can't state
Call for a
that.
conclusion on the part of the witness.
Sustained. The answer is stricken if there was.
Now, you've indicated that on more than one occasion in the course of these two sessions when the boys were together, they talked about their father in terms that led you to believe they were in awe of him, correct?
That's correct.
They admired him, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
They thought he was greatly accomplished, didn't they?
They did.
Very successful.
They did.
And did you discern from that was a message in their family, that what their father was what one should be?
Objection calls for conclusion and speculation on the part of the witness.
Sustained.
You knew Mr. Menendez, didn't you?
I did.
And he wasn't your patient, was he?
He was not.
And you had how many meetings with him?
I don't recall, but it was more than one.
Let me ask you this question, Dr. Oziel. Did you like him?
No,
Question relevant to strike.
Overruled. What was your answer?
no.
Did he treat you respectfully?
Oh, I don't know about that, but that has nothing to do with why I didn't like him.
I didn't ask you that. I just asked you the first half. Did he treat you respectfully?
I don't think he particularly treated me respectfully or anybody respectfully.
Was he condescending towards you?
Yes, he was condescending.
Now, you understand I'm not asking you for expert opinion, just as a person meeting another person.
I understand.
Did he appear to be a very strong-willed person?
Objection lack of foundation. Do we have some foundation here?
Yes. Objection sustained.
Well, you've already testified you met him, you think, more than once.
Well, I'm a little concerned about privilege issues.
Yes, it does seem that you're asking for more than just what might be derived from meetings with
All right.
Mr. Menendez.
All right, I will ask it differently. Did he dominate the conversation when you were in his presence?
Objection vague and lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Yes, he did.
Now, you also met Mrs. Menendez, didn't you?
I did.
And do you recall on how many occasions you met her?
Again, several times.
And when you saw her, did she seem sad?
She seemed sad.
Now, I'm not asking for a clinical impression here. Did she seem sad?
She seemed sad, and a lot of other adjectives that I'd ascribed as well. Not only sad. That's just one small component.
Okay.
Did she seem depressed?
I would say she seemed depressed.
Just step out of this for a moment, Dr. Oziel. To the best of your knowledge as a therapist, is there any negative impact on children who are being raised by a depressed mother?
Your Honor, we'd object at this point beyond the scope of direct and also improper opinion of this.
Yeah.
Objection sustained on the first ground.
Well, I'd like to be heard.
Sure.
To page 11, Dr. Oziel. When you testified here, you were being asked questions by Mrs. Bozanich in direct, and you testified here concerning, let's get to a general question, the explanation about why Mrs. Menendez was killed. And 9391 counsel, you said, you looked down at your notes and then you testified at line 21. They felt it was a plan that wouldn't allow for any detection of it. Would you be good enough, Dr. Oziel, to look on page 11 and point out for me that phrase, wouldn't allow for any detection, or the word detection at all on that page or any other page?
Objection irrelevant.
I'm quite certain that that word is not in the transcript, and I don't contend that all the words that were used or the entire content of those two sessions are in this transcript. I think I've testified to the contrary.
Now, you also testified You also testified at page 9399, line 5. You said that they really didn't kill their parents for money, but out of the hatred that they had in particular towards your father. Now, I call your attention to page 14.
You meant towards their father? I'm sorry.
I think you misread it. You said your father.
Their father, I said. The mic is fuzzy today.
Maybe. Or maybe you misread
Are you
it.
looking at 14?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear 14. I am now.
Okay. Now, in these notes, what you wrote, the last paragraph of 14 was, the boys were making the point that they didn't kill their parents for money, but rather out of hatred, etc. Now, do you see any distinction between the way you testified, they really didn't kill their parents for their money, versus what's in the notes? They were making the point they didn't kill their parents for the money. Or is it all the same to you?
Objection vague.
Why don't you read back the testimony that you're referring to, the exact quote?
They really didn't kill their parents for money, but out of the hatred that they had, in particular towards their father.
I don't know the distinction that you're making.
All right, so to you, that it doesn't make any difference whether you say really didn't. Who suggested that they did?
They discussed the role that money played in the killing, and so
They said it played no role in the killing, correct?
No, that's not correct.
Not correct. Want to change your testimony?
No, I'm not changing my testimony.
Okay. Show me where they said that money played any role in the killing.
Ms. Abramson, I think I've made the point repeatedly that this transcript does not consist of the totality of all the things that were
So
said.
you left that part out, Dr. Oziel? You forgot that?
Excuse me, may we take a vote?
All right, number one, it's unclear what you're referring to about that part. So until you clarify that, we have a cross-examination or questioning about a subject that is rather
I'll be happy
ambiguous.
to clear it up. Are you saying, Dr. Oziel, that they told you that money played a part in the killing? Is that what you're now testifying to?
No, actually, if you want me to clarify what I'm saying, I'll
Just
be glad
answer,
to.
if you could just answer the question, this would move a lot faster.
Excuse me, Your Honor, could that
Yes,
question, please?
counsel, again, if you have something to say to the witness, address it to me and I'll
Are you
deal
saying, I'm sorry, are you saying that or no?
Yeah, she's
I don't even know what you're asking me at this point, counsel.
Okay, I'm asking you, did they say that money played any part in the killing?
I don't think I can lump Erik and Lyle together and answer that question. It's not possible.
Then I will
This is an
ask you
important
about
point,
Erik.
though.
Did Erik ever indicate that money played any part at all in the killing?
Excuse me.
Yes, yes. All right.
Number 6, because you thought about it in advance, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you testified here, if I can compare these things. Concerning one pattern of killing, I believe you said. You testified here in front of the juries that one pattern of killing, this is 9399 counsel at page 17, that you had described to Erik and Lyle had certain characteristics. And these are the ones you gave. It had to do with being premeditated, involving sort of a plan, a job that needed to be accomplished, where the killing was, in fact, something that was like a job that had to get done, get accomplished, that feelings were, there either weren't many feelings about it, or whatever feelings that there were really didn't get in the way. Recall your testimony to that effect on Wednesday?
Yes, I do.
And is that word for word what you told Erik and Lyle during the meeting that you had with them on November 2nd to describe this particular kind of killing?
It's the best reproduction that I can produce 4 years later of what I said. I can't swear that it absolutely was word for word. It's the best of my memory.
All right, well, then let's call your attention to the testimony you gave at a hearing out of the jury's presence on Friday, July 30th. And this is Mrs. Bazanich, 6 pages into his testimony. I have the unofficial version. And do you recall testifying?
Just a moment.
Sorry. Do you have the short one?
Yeah, but
If it's the short one, it's page 6.
wait.
Okay.
Let me just see what you.
Here, and I'm going to start reading here.
Okay.
Okay. Is that the same one?
No.
I'll find it for you in that one. It's just 6 pages in from the beginning of this testimony. Okay? On July 30th, 1993, do you recall testifying as follows concerning that first type of murder? A murder that was predominantly a means to an end, something that the murderer believed was a way to achieve a particular end. It was a planned, premeditated murder and a way to deal with problem solving. And that if there were emotions involved with it, they didn't get in the way of needing to accomplish the end. And that once there was a decision that the murder had to be committed, it was committed, and feelings basically didn't enter into it in a significant way. You remember that testimony?
Yes, I do. So
when you testified in trial, you talked about a job that had to get done. That's sort of like you're a hitman patient, is it not?
That's similar to that person.
As compared to what you testified to on July 30th, a problem-solving thing. Do you see those two as indistinguishable?
Not really. In my mind, they're not distinguishable.
They're not distinguishable
I meant
in your mind.
fundamentally the same thing.
Let me ask you this. Well, let me move on to your second description. Before the juries,
It's smart of her to continue bringing up the hitman patient that he had before, because he, as a reminder, he didn't need to, or he didn't feel the need to protect himself from this hitman patient when he learned of what this guy had done before as part of his job as a hitman. So this is another sort of chink in his armor, so to speak, right? Where he's had other patients that did something, at least one other patient, right, that did something kind of similar, and yet he didn't make that same sort of disclosure that he did with the brothers here. So smart of her to continue to bring it up. If I'm Leslie Abramson, I am bringing up the hitman patient as much as possible to be like, this is very similar, right? And yet that guy never, you never talked to, you never talked about. So.
and that's at 9,400. You said that what you told Erik and Lyle was there was another kind of killing. You testified the other kind of killing that I described was a killing, if you will, out of intense emotion, something that occurred, a crime of passion type of killing, where there wasn't any premeditation and it wasn't a logical, rational plan to murder someone. It was just coming in, for example, to find something very emotional happening in one's life and grabbing the nearest knife or pistol and in the heat of the moment, shooting someone. So a lack of premeditation and something arising primarily out of emotion, not out of thought and rational and plan and logic. Remember that testimony?
Yes. Oh, you're refreshing my memory, right?
Now, do you recall testifying on July 30th, last Friday, about how you described this other kind of murder? It's again on page 6, counsel.
I'm sorry, I don't have that transcript. My goodness.
Well, it's on the 6th page of the official.
No, it's not.
Do you want me to find it for you?
Yeah, Elise, but the point,
Right, 8670.
sorry, hang on a sec.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The point that she was making though here was that she had read through his notes where he said that the brothers weren't letting their emotions get in the way. They were basically looking at this as like a job to be done, a means to an end. So that's why she's trying to draw that comparison. And it may have worked on some of the jurors, because we know how this trial ends up, right? So because there were two of them. So if there were two, the first one obviously was not did not end with a guilty verdict. Okay.
And the way you testified about this crime of passion on July 30th was, I gave an example such as someone coming home to find their partner or spouse in bed with someone else, or something of that nature, and then picking up a knife or a gun and killing them. And that is someone acting out of emotion and without a rational plan, was eventually, maybe the word should have been essential. Well, eventually committing an act of passion. It wasn't something that was premeditated. Recall that testimony.
It sounds like the testimony I gave.
All right. And you don't see that there's any difference or distinction in the two different ways that you describe this kind of murder as between the hearing and the testimony in trial. Is that right?
They seem similar to me in terms of what I was communicating. I'm not saying that the words are identical. I'm just saying that the concepts are similar to me.
All right. Let me ask you about similar concepts. What if you had the following situation? Which one of your two kinds of murder would it fit? let's assume that you're a homeowner, hypothetically, that there's a homeowner living in an area that has been subjected to many violent burglaries, burglars coming in and hurting people, okay? So this homeowner decides he's got to do something to protect his family. So he plans to go out and buy some shotguns in order to protect his family. And he acts upon that plan. And he goes out and he buys some shotguns.
Interesting.
And he goes home. And he expects, because these burglaries have been happening in a pattern, that a burglar may indeed break into his house. And he's sitting up at night, and he has the shotgun across his knees. And a burglar starts breaking into his house. And he isn't emotional, but he shoots the burglar. Which category does that fall into?
Your Honor, we would object to this as being improper opinion of evidence and improper.
Objection sustained.
Well, I assume, Dr. Oziel, that when you gave the Menendez brothers these two exceptions, you gave them this choice: choose A or choose B. Is that right?
May we please approach?
Yes.
This
Your next question, please.
So, okay, so she lost the objection, but the jury just heard her draw this comparison between Dr. Oziel buying a few shotguns to protect himself, having this plan, going to the big five sporting goods to buy the guns and then setting them up in his house. Does that mean that he, if he had to use them, would he have been guilty of premeditated murder? Or was he just thinking, I am getting this in case I need it? That's an interesting point that I hadn't thought about, but now I'm thinking about because she's drawn this comparison, regardless of the fact that he wasn't able to answer because prosecution objected, the judge sustained the objection. So, whatever, but the jury still heard that hypothetical and still kind of, after just having heard Dr. Oziel testify to how he was afraid, and so he went and bought guns, then it doesn't take too much. I'm not saying that everyone will be convinced by this, let alone anyone, but it doesn't take too many logical steps for someone on the jury to say, okay, I can understand the sons thinking that, if they are in fear of their lives by their father, that they are taking these steps to protect themselves. I don't know, like it's a logical progression that someone could follow.
Now, Dr. Oziel, you testified that after describing, with whatever specific words you may have done it at the time, these two different kinds of murders, Erik and Lyle indicated which one was more appropriately or approximately described their situation. Is that right?
They just identified which category.
Okay. They didn't ask you any questions about defining the terms, did they?
They did not.
And they didn't ask you if you had used, for example, the problem-solving example. They didn't ask you what you meant by, what do you mean by problem, or what do you mean by problem-solving? They didn't ask anything, did they?
No, they didn't.
Were you in 1989 familiar with the literature on parricide?
No, I was not.
Were you familiar with the literature on adolescent homicide?
Your Honor, we would object as being beyond scope of direct.
Well, as far as the questions whether he was familiar with it, without going beyond that, the objection's overruled.
Okay. I'm not going to go into the literature, but were you familiar with the literature of the studies on adolescent homicide?
No, I was not.
And you understood when I used the word parricide, I meant parent killing by children?
Yes, I did.
I heard parasite. Okay, I'm glad that she clarified that.
Now, you testified that there was a discussion on November the 2nd. In fact, you testified that throughout the discussions on November 2nd, both Lyle and Erik commented on how perfect the appearance of their family was to the outside world. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, did you meet some of the members of the family after the parents died?
Yes, I did.
And I think you've indicated you spent some substantial period of time around Erik and Lyle and family members over the course of 3 days.
That's correct.
And did you ever hear, while in close proximity to Erik and Lyle, did you ever hear other members of the family at this point talking about the parents in very glowing terms?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
It's not being offered for the truth, Your Honor.
Objection is sustained.
Now, in the course of this session on November 2nd, did Erik and Lyle continue to talk about the family, in spite of what happened, as being a successful family?
They seemed very confused. They spoke about it as being a successful family, and they spoke about it as being a sham of a family. So I'd say that they made both sets of statements.
Walking contradictions. All of us are, right? Hopefully not that much, though.
You indicate that either one or both, or some amalgamation of them both, said that the father had no relationship except a negative one and an abusive one with the mother, and that the boys had total distance and criticism and rejection and humiliation from the father, right?
Sounds right.
And nowhere is there any description of what the mother's relationship towards, for example, Erik was at all.
In that description? No, there isn't in that description.
In the whole session.
There isn't in these notes.
Question, and nowhere was there any description of what the mother's relationship towards, for example, Erik was at all in that description?
Yes, I think it would be accurate to say that that description did not have anything to do with Erik's relationship with his mother.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, or I didn't understand that last answer.
All right, we'll have the answer in back.
Yes, thank you.
I believe it would be accurate to say that that description would not have anything to do with Erik's relationship with his mother.
No, I don't think that's the question I asked you, though. I asked you, did you get any description over the course of either session from Erik about his relationship with his mother?
In the notes?
Well, I'm only asking about what I know about. I only know it's in the notes.
Counsel, again, let's not make statements such as that.
She is arguing with him a little bit.
And re-ask the question, please.
In the notes.
No.
Now, are you prepared to say that there were discussions about his relationship with his mother on October 31st and November 2nd, but you just didn't put it in the notes? Is that your position?
Yes.
Did you make any rational decision or logical decision as to what to put in and what to leave out, or is it just whatever you remembered on the day you dictated?
I think that what I tended to do in dictating these notes was to dictate what the essential elements of these sessions were to the best of my recollection and as faithfully as possible. And I wasn't at the time understanding or thinking that these notes would ever be used for any particular purpose. And I certainly didn't ever construe the dictated notes to be a complete restatement of every single interaction that occurred in the 7 or 8 hours worth of sessions that I had with Erik and Lyle. And and they are not a complete restatement of the entire 8 hours of sessions that I had on those 2 dates with Erik and Lyle.
Well, you've already testified that you did make these notes for a particular purpose, and that was a purpose to, I think you've told us, protect you. Isn't that why you made these notes? Put them on tape, put them in a safe deposit box?
I think my testimony was that that was one of a number of reasons why I made the notes.
Well,
and
let's stick with that reason for a moment if we can. Now, it is your position here that you were threatened on the night of October 31st, and as a result of that threat, you told a woman that you have characterized as not very stable about this confession of murder. Am I stating your testimony accurately so far?
that part of it.
Okay. Now, you talked to us a little bit before in your testimony about Evidence Code Section 1024. And Evidence Code Section 1024 says that if a psychotherapist, for example, has reason to believe and does believe that a patient poses a threat to another party, then the privilege may not apply to some of the information that the therapist has received from a patient. Generally speaking, that's what it says, right?
Generally speaking.
All right. And you interpreted on October 31st, Section 1024, to mean that since you had been threatened and since you conceived that Miss Smith was also potentially in danger, you had a right to unprivilege, basically, the information that you had received from Erik and Lyle, correct?
Well, there also is something that I testified to previously that relates to the Tarasoff decision. That's
Well, I'm getting to Tarasoff next, but for the moment, you knew that although you had no duty whatsoever to tell anybody anything, if you were being a reasonable therapist, if there was a believable threat against a third party, you had a right to tell that person. That's what you understood, right?
That's I understood that much. Yes.
Of course, Dr. Oziel, if you were wrong, if your judgment later was questioned, if a court decided you didn't act reasonably, you could lose your license for revealing patient secrets, couldn't you?
That was never anything in my mind at all.
Could that happen? It's considered unethical to reveal patient secrets unless you're justified, isn't it?
Of course, any therapist could lose his or her license by wantonly revealing secrets for no reason. Sure.
But not every therapist was on probation as of October 31st, 1989, but you were, correct?
It's correct that I was on probation.
Therefore, let's
Going back
just
into the
assume
probation part.
hypothetically that you knew in your own head that whether you were threatened or not threatened, you're telling Ms. Smith had to do with your private, personal agenda with Ms. Smith. Let's assume hypothetically. Isn't it
All right, counsel, that's an argumentative question. Let's ask something else.
Isn't it true that one of the purposes for your writing these notes up the way you did was to justify the fact that a couple of weeks before you told your unstable girlfriend patient secrets, and now you were worried about whether or not she could be trusted? Isn't that what happened?
Uh-oh.
Ms. Abramson, I'm
Is
sure.
that what happened?
You can answer the questions.
Yes or no?
Yes or
Ms.
no?
Abramson, no, that isn't what happened.
Now, in fact, you wound up moving your unstable girlfriend into your family home for 3 months, starting in December, didn't you?
Would you like to ask me why?
No, I would like to ask you what I would like to ask you, and that's what I
Seems
just asked you. Now, can you answer?
Okay,
Oh,
let's
that's-
not argue.
Yes.
You ask a question. The question was,
Yeah,
did you
she's
move
right though.
The answer is yes, you did.
And she lived there until she fled your house and went to the police, correct?
Yes, that's basically correct.
She's like, I'm going to ask what I'm going to ask. Did I stutter? No.
And isn't it
Answer
true
my
that over the
question.
course of your relationship with Miss Smith, you frequently threatened her to control her behavior by telling her, aha, I'm going to tell Erik and Lyle that you know their secret and they'll come kill you? Didn't
Holy
you do
shit.
that?
Quite the contrary.
Dr. Oziel, you know, do you not, that Miss Smith made tape recordings of her conversations with you after she went to the police?
Oh, no.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And you've seen those tape recordings, have you not?
I've seen several of the tape recordings.
And do you deny, Dr. Oziel, that on those tape recordings you threaten that she will be killed if she goes to the police because you don't know yet that she's already gone?
Your Honor, argumentative, assumes facts not evidence, and restates testimony.
Sustain.
Do you threaten Ms.
Is it a
Smith.
question that you're asking in the present tense? Is he doing
Bring
it
up the
now, or is it
tape.
something
No,
happened in the
did he?
past?
Did he?
Okay,
I was going to say, does he on the tapes? But
okay, just
I'll
phrase it
rephrase it.
in the proper tense, please.
on the tapes that Ms.
Bring
Smith
us
made
the
for the
tapes. I want to
police,
hear it.
can your voice be heard threatening that she will die if she goes to the police?
No, my voice can be heard warning them that I thought that Erik or Lyle would kill her if she went to the police.
And when she said to you, Erik and Lyle will be in jail, they can't kill me, you said, well, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to put your name and the names of your friends in a file and make sure that they know that I'm not responsible for giving out the information. Do you remember saying that?
No, I don't remember it, but it sounds like something that I could have said based upon the fact that she was threatening to go to the police, and she had previously threatened to falsely tell Erik and Lyle that I had been telling multiple people about the fact that they had committed the murder of their parents, which is totally false.
Of course, she had never met Erik and Lyle as of March 5th when she went to the police, had she?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
And they still didn't know this woman even existed, as far as you knew.
Not as far as I knew.
Wow. I want to hear that tape.
And didn't you, in fact, make a joke in front of Miss Smith? A joke that you and she discuss in these telephone tapes? Didn't you, in fact, say in front of her that you were going to get Erik and Lyle to murder Richard Klein?
I have no recollection of that, and it also may involve privilege. So I have to claim the privilege with respect to that.
With respect to what? I mean,
All right, was your answer no, or that you're claiming a privilege?
I don't recall, and I'm also wanting to claim the privilege with respect to any further mention of that.
Your Honor, he can't deny something.
Well, counsel, let's not argue such a matter at this point. Why don't you move on to something else unless you need to have this resolved at this point?
I'm trying to find my pad. Now you mentioned before there's another aspect to the Tarasoff decision that you're aware of. Is that right, Dr. Oziel?
Overall,
Is that right?
I don't know what you mean by another part or whatever. Can you clarify?
Well, we're talking about 1024 and the fact that, a reasonable therapist who's faced with a credible threat can warn somebody even though they have to give up confidential information to do it. That's 1024, correct?
Yes.
But then there's a case called Tarasoff versus Regents of the University of California. Are you familiar with that case?
I'm somewhat familiar with the case.
And that is a case that established the legal principle in California that if a therapist doesn't warn a known potential victim of a truly dangerous patient, that therapist can be sued by the aggrieved parties. Isn't that what Tarasoff says?
That's not at all what I recalled about Tarasoff. And
Well, you recall Tarasoff was a case where there was a psychiatrist who worked for the
well, let's
university.
not go into it. And the issue is what he remembers of it.
Tarasoff is a case that created civil liability to
Well,
lawsuit.
again, you're telling him something.
I want to ask him if that's how he understands
Well,
it.
let's ask him. He mentioned it. What was?
Yeah,
Why
how
did you
did you
mention the
understand?
Tarasoff case?
I only mentioned the Tarasoff case as a way of saying that there, in addition to 1024, there is not only a duty to warn, and I wasn't thinking of civil liability, but rather professional responsibility, a duty to warn. And in addition to that, I mentioned it because it also talks about taking whatever steps are reasonable to prevent the threatened danger. And in my judgment, the steps I took were the reasonable steps necessary to prevent the threatened danger. And
Your Honor,
that's all I
I'm
meant by Tarasoff.
going to move to strike the witnesses deciding to ask him questions and then answering them. That was not responsive
No,
to
the
court's
objection is
question.
overruled. The witness did mention that case, and this was a question asked to explain why he mentioned it. Objection
Now, are you
overruled.
saying that you were unaware that basically what Tarasoff does is it makes a therapist liable to lawsuit if they don't fulfill that duty to warn a third person. You didn't know anything about that part?
I don't know if I did or didn't know anything. I didn't relate to that in any way. It
I didn't ask
wasn't what I
if you-
remembered about that. I
Do you-
didn't
Did you
recall.
know about that part?
I don't know that I did. I don't think I did.
Do you belong to the American Psychological Association?
No, I don't at present.
Do you belong to the California Psychological Association?
No, I don't.
You need to find something out first. Yeah, but I haven't found something. That's a good topic.
Do you read the American Psychologist?
No, objection beyond the scope, irrelevant.
It's foundational, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled to just that question. Do you ever read that periodical?
Not recently, no.
Do you know who John Monahan is?
No, I don't.
Have you ever read anything about limiting therapist exposure to Tarasoff liability?
No, I don't.
Never read about that at all.
No, I haven't.
Do you know, Dr. Oziel, how much money, we'll strike that. Do you know how much money you billed to Erik and Lyle Menendez between October 31st, 1989 and the time of their arrest?
No, I do not.
Would you like to add it? You have the ledgers? Right.
No, I don't have the ledgers.
Care Bear always has such fun facts about this case.
If you think I'll need one. Did you want me to add this up?
I want you to add up how much you charged them between October 31st and March the 8th.
Oh, okay, thank you. My ledger cards are a little confusing because I have Erik and Lyle's names separately, then I have them on a sheet together. Do you know what the total is? And I'll try to work backwards. I'm not sure how much I
You can
billed
just add them together. Treat them as one unit.
I'm not really sure. I mean, it's hard to determine from these cards.
It's hard to determine from the card.
Yeah, I'm confused about exactly how much I billed them. So
Well,
perhaps.
maybe we'll work on it during the break.
Okay.
Now, you've testified that on November 2nd, when Erik and Lyle were describing the reasons why their mother was killed, basically you're saying that it's because once there was a plan, she fit into the plan and they couldn't give up the plan. Is that basically what they were saying?
That's correct. They couldn't figure out a way to have the father killed and still have the mother left alive. It wouldn't work.
Okay, then I ask you, Dr. Oziel, what was the plan?
The plan?
The plan.
You mean the specific plan I've already elaborated in terms of what they did?
No. What you do is what you do. But what was the plan before anything was done?
The plan was to do what they did.
The plan was to, what do you mean to do what they did? To walk into the family room and shoot their parents? That's a plan? That was the plan?
I didn't say that.
Well, why don't you tell me, what was this plan? You've described it as a plan. You've described it as a perfect plan, as an unchangeable plan. What was the plan?
All right, it is argumentative. Objection
I don't know
sustained.
if you guys can
Can you
hear
tell
Indy
me
in the
what
background,
the
but she's
plan
also
was?
complaining.
That you have indicated they both referred to repeatedly.
As per the discussion that I had with Erik and Lyle, the plan was to find a way to kill the father in a way, but just first of all, to kill the father.
Okay,
And-
let's stop there. So they had to find a way to kill the father.
In
Is
a
that
way
right?
such that they were not detected.
Okay, so they needed to find a way to kill the father in a way they would not be detected. That was the plan.
I didn't say that. That's only the first sentence out of my mouth.
Okay, so that's not the plan. That's just a decision to kill the father. That's what it sounds like.
Counsel, again, you are stating your own personal opinions, which are not evidence. The comment
She can-
is stricken.
she can
Jury's
avoid
admonished to disregard
This
it.
response
Ask
from
another
the judge
question,
by
please.
Is
just
this the
making
same
it
as
sound
your
like a
plan to
question.
buy shotguns?
No, I wouldn't characterize them as being the same at all.
Well, said they needed to find a way to kill the father in a way they would not be detected. That was the idea behind the plan. Is that right?
The initial goal was to get the father out of their life. They couldn't figure out how to live and how to be able to continue living and feel any freedom at all or any ability to be happy with the father in their life. And that was the inception of them sitting down and beginning to discuss how to accomplish that end. And they had a series of discussions over time that changed variously, that related to what to do and which elements to put in the plan and which elements to take out of the plan, and whether to put the mother in the plan, leave her in the plan, or take her out of the plan. And those discussions took place over a period of time.
What was the plan? You've told us the goal, kill the father. What's the plan?
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled. Had you finished the answer, by the way?
No,
All right, the question is, again,
So
What
what
was
was
the
the plan they eventually work out of over these discussions over time? What is the plan?
and I'm assuming that you're asking me only elements that I knew of as of October 31st and November 2nd.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Move to strike that remark and ask that the witness be admonished.
all right, the question is relating to the two conversations on those two dates.
Okay.
It's in these notes from these 2 days that you use the word plan repeatedly. Isn't that true?
Yes, it's true.
And after all, you dictated these notes. These are all your words. Correct?
Objection, Ms. Casey, testimony.
Sustained.
Well, whether you're trying to repeat what someone else said, the only thing we know for sure is if I listen to this tape, I hear Jerome Oziel, right?
I would think so.
Yes. So you use the word plan over and over again. What was the plan?
The plan was to kill the father in some violent way that evolved into the purchase of shotguns that did include finding a way to predict when they would be able to kill the father and the mother in a way, and also develop an alibi about where they would be such that they would not be detected, and also to think through the different things that could link them to the crime, and to make sure that they thought of all different aspects of things that they thought could link them to the crime and try to develop a way such as to rule out any of the things that would be evidence that would be left at the crime scene, and to have an effective alibi, and then to pick a time when their mother and father were in a situation in the home, and to ultimately to kill the mother and the father. But as I said, it was not their original idea or motive to kill their mother. That was something that evolved.
Well, now, did they tell you that they couldn't think of a single way that they could have killed their father without their mother being in the room? Is that what they were telling you?
They never said those specific things at all.
Did they tell you that this wine tasting party was an effective alibi when they got there after the place had closed?
They did believe that the wine tasting party would be an alibi.
And when, to your knowledge, Dr. Oziel, did they even find out there was such a thing as that wine tasting party that day?
They never discussed with me, Erik or Lyle, when they specifically came up with the wine tasting party.
But it was your understanding that this wine tasting party was part of a plan that was being debated over some period of time?
No, it was my understanding that they began discussions of how to conclude or effect the murders some period of time before the murders, and that the plan evolved until it felt like it had a perfect element to it, where it wasn't possible for them to be detected. And once they had it in that perfect form, they didn't alter it.
Well, let me see if I understand this. They didn't give you any information whatsoever about any kind of synchronized or worked out or thought through set of or chain of events. Because I'm not hearing that from you. In other words, they shot their parents in the middle of their own neighborhood, in the middle of the house at 10 o'clock at night. Was that the plan?
Objection argumentative.
Sustain.
Well, was that the plan? We're going to
Objection sustain. Ask another question.
Was the plan, we'll shoot our parents with two 12-gauge shotguns in the middle of Beverly Hills at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, and hope that later the police will be silly enough to let us go back to our car where we could take the rest of the shotgun shells out. Was that the plan?
Your Honor, objection argumentative.
Objection sustain.
Did they tell you there was a plan to purposely shoot their parents in their own home on a Sunday night?
Look at his
The
death
court has
stare
already
that he's
sustained
giving.
But, Your Honor, I
It's
don't see.
argumentative. Rephrase the question.
We have our break right now.
Let's go a little further here. Your next question, please.
You omitted from your direct
Man.
testimony a
He is
statement
not
that was
liking
made to
Leslie
you that
today.
they had gone back to the car after the police were at the scene, and the police let them go into their own car, and they took out evidence
That's a
at that time,
death
shotgun
stare.
shells, empties, full ones. Isn't that true? You were told that.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. Was that part of the plan? To
No,
call
it
the
was not.
police before you've cleaned out the evidence?
No, it was not part of any plan.
So that was just mere happenstance that the police let that happen.
Objection argumentative.
Sustain.
Is that what you were told? That it was just lucky?
Told by
that the
whom?
police, by Erik and Lyle
When was this?
on October 31st.
Yes, I was told that it was just lucky, and that they had left shells around in the car, and absolutely that it was lucky. That's what I was told.
And was there any indication when you were told this that they didn't think maybe the plan was so perfect, since it took luck to keep them from getting arrested that night?
Objection argumentative.
Sustain.
Well, Your Honor, I'd like to be heard. I don't believe that was argumentative.
I don't
All right,
like,
we'll
I
let
don't
you
like
be
these
heard at the
argumentative
sidebar here.
objections. I don't
All right, why
like
don't
them
you rephrase
because,
that question, and then we'll let you take your break.
because look, she's still asking a question, yes or no. I understand if you keep hitting the witness over and over again, then you start getting into asked and answered. I don't really agree that these are terribly argumentative questions, though, because it's her job. I mean, this is cross-examination. He's on the hot seat. She's the defense attorney. Defense attorneys usually, I think, should be able to get away with a little bit more than the prosecution. Yeah. I think the judge is getting a little nitpicky on this. Hey, puppy, what's up? What's up, puppy? What's up? You want to be let out? You're okay. I'll be done soon, okay? She doesn't know what soon means. Okay.
Okay, did, you guys yet? I'm not done yet. Did either Erik or Lyle, in commenting upon the luck of having removed evidence from the car, indicate that this was an imperfect?
Wait a second. Did I not continue playing this? What's happening here? Oh, no. He's just death staring. Okay. Sorry.
In this otherwise perfect plan.
Yes, I don't think that Erik and Lyle felt in retrospect that that the plan was actually carried off perfectly. And I can recall numerous statements that in particular were made by Erik that night that again are not in this record, which relate to Erik having said that it was extremely imperfectly committed. And I can remember all sorts of things that they said that are not in the record.
Well,
Right.
did they mention to you that another aspect in which they just got lucky, which is that the Beverly Hills Police Department never did any gunshot residue testing on their hands, or they would have been arrested that night?
I don't know if they mentioned that or not, but they. I remember very specifically Erik mentioning to me the shotgun shells and frankly, kind of shaking his head about the police department, saying that he couldn't believe they let him go back to the car. I mean, that's just frankly, that's what he said.
So he couldn't believe that he didn't get arrested that night.
That's correct.
This would be a good time.
All right, we'll take a recess and we'll resume in 15 minutes, which is 25 minutes after the hour. Don't discuss this case with anyone or form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 3:25. Dave, over here. All right, everyone is present and we'll continue the cross-examination.
No, I wanted to approach just briefly for one question.
All right.
I discussed it with
Andy, you're okay, puppy.
Dr. Oziel about the.
Can he be excused until Monday? I don't think he's needed.
Well, are you going to need his testimony on any matter? Okay, then we'll see you back here Monday. All right, thank you.
The court had indicated that the court would allow cross-examination of Dr. Oziel concerning the accusation pending against him by Attorney General's office in regards to the Smith allegation. I was unclear.
Oh, is this all going to be argument here? Let's see.
The undue.
Yeah.
Such as that these
Okay.
appeared for his
Entirely collateral.
was pointing at 1980.
Okay.
have over the years.
Now here's a question. Okay, so yeah, that's the end for this one. So we can either start into the final part of Jerome Oziel's testimony, but that's over 3 hours and 20 minutes. Or we can just save that until next week and cut it off here. I kind of want to cut it off here, partly because Indy is a little bit impatient. She might be hungry. She might need to go outside. I'm not sure. She just got home, so I don't know what her condition is coming back from weekend camp. Mary M, did you say Andy or Indy? I said Indy. I know sometimes when I say Indy, especially when I'm like reprimanding her or talking to her the way that I am right now, it sounds like Andy sometimes, and it's kind of funny. Because of course, my brother being Andy. So, okay. I think we'll probably cut this off at this point and we'll finish Dr. Oziel's testimony next week That'll be part 4 of it. And yeah, I think that's probably what we'll do. Okay. So what do you guys think? I think Dr. Oziel, I don't like him. I think that he's been answering with a lot of crappy answers, but I still don't know that I disbelieve him with them admitting to him that they did it. And so I think that for some people that's going to be enough to say that they think that the guys are guilty, right? It is something of an open question to me as to whether or not he actually like reasonably feared for his life, finding out about the things that they said that they did and whatnot. So I don't know that I'm convinced that that was a proper disclosure. Personally, that's my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, next week we'll have Dr. Oziel again, so we'll probably be seeing some redirect. We'll see how that goes. This has been an exceptionally long cross-examination of him, and for good reason, right? Because his testimony is particularly damaging to the brothers. So, good point, Mia. The defense is not trying to say that the brothers didn't admit to him, though. Yeah. Because they've maintained that line since the beginning. It's they're basically saying we all know who did it. The question is whether or not it was legitimate that they did what they did. So they definitely are arguing quite a bit right now about whether or not there was a plan, because he says there was a plan, but then, Leslie's trying to push him. She's like, tell me about the plan. What's in the box? Tell me what's in the box. What's in the box, man? Right? Like that's what she keeps saying. It's like, give me the plan. Give me the plan. Give me the plan. Now she's getting in trouble with the judge because, he's agreeing with the prosecution, saying that she's being argumentative. I kind of disagree. I think she's pushing on him properly in cross-examination, maybe at some points pushing a little bit far, but I don't know. For the most part, I if I'm the judge, I'm letting her push, because this is cross-examination and she's the defense attorney. But I don't know, man. We'll see where this continues on. But thank you so much to everybody for joining today. This has been a lovely way to start the week. So happy Monday to everybody. And we'll see you guys in the next video.